Hello, Dane. I want to talk with you about money. Now, all of our life until recently, we've felt that money is overrated, that it's painful, the degree of obsession that our culture has with money at the expense of felt experience and people. That's one thread of this narrative that has kept us poor until recently. Now, in your 30s, you overcame the addiction with poverty, with being close to the edge, the adrenaline rush of coming right up to the point of having a little bit of money, then quickly spending it, and then running on a razor's edge. It was a very interesting game, and indeed it was depressing to have enough money, to have to let go of that daily source of adrenaline. But what came out of that was not needing to borrow money and becoming debt-free, and also shortly after, as you went on a savings, crusade, right? To break that addiction, you refused to spend money. We refused to spend money until we had savings at a certain point. And if you haven't gone through that point yet, it is 2 or 3 months of absolute hell to break the addiction with being on the edge, the addiction to familiarity, the addiction with poverty. And it is an addiction. While the adrenaline game came down around money, it opened up an adrenaline game that could take place in our 30s as we began to take vacations, take workshops, and travel. That couldn't have been possible without a stable savings cushion. You can't go off for a month's trip with a check about to bounce. And so, even though the adrenaline will come down, and the 3 months will be absolute hell, the way any junkie experiences when getting off of a drug, the adrenaline of traveling around the world is more enjoyable, is more growth-filled. And that was the next stage. Saving up $30,000, spending $30,000 in travel, discovering the beauties of Thailand, the beauties of the Philippines, the beauties of Europe. And you will discover that the culture, the diametrically opposed culture to the United States in Thailand, is medicinal, is incredibly healing because of its antithesis to American culture. That was made possible because of money, but precisely because it was so incredible. Right? Next began a cycle. Right? Save up $30 or $30,000, spend $30,000. Save up $30,000, spend $30,000. Spend more and more time outside of the United States and in travel. And yet, this led to, by age 40, 41, to still being in that general range as an enormous crisis hit that consumed hundreds of thousands of dollars. And on the other side of that crisis, on the other side of that identity crisis, that traumatic crisis, comes into focus a nonprofit, Happiness Data. A reason to live, a reason worth living. So here's what I want you to know, younger self. Money is overrated. It is painful to have everyone pivoting around $100 bills and not deeply felt experience. And that is something that continues in a culture as long as there is a scarcity mentality. And as long as the false promise of money is unfulfilled, right? America's promise is that more and more money will make you rich, and being rich will make you happy. And when having $100,000, $1 million, $10 million does not make you happy, and you hold on to the promise, a culture in all of its different stages of wealth and abundance will claw after money. That doesn't stop whether or not you pursue money or you have money. And you do not need an enormous amount of money to survive or have some reasonable sense of security in survival. You can do that with this make some money, spend some money lifetime. But when you need a reason to live, when you need a reason to endure and work through high levels of pain, high levels of trauma, the answer is not going to be limited to you as an individual. It's not going to be answered by what you can do with a little amount of savings. It's going to be answered with visions, with dreams, with medicine of a nonprofit nature. And here's what you didn't know. I understand you have not wanted to increase your income and increase the amount of money you paid in taxes, to put more and more of your income into taxes. But this is what I discovered. For $250, you can start a nonprofit. There are two classifications of nonprofits. One, nonprofits that receive revenues of less than $50,000 a year. And another, nonprofits that receive revenues in excess of $50,000 a year. Now, it takes more time. It is an enormous accounting burden. There's more paperwork. There's more money to set up a nonprofit in the larger category. But for $250, you can set up a nonprofit. And the more money you make, the more money you can donate to that nonprofit, up to $50,000 a year, without getting involved in a tax return, accounting, and that money can be invested tax-free so that it can grow well beyond that $50,000 limit, so that it can grow and be available to help other people, to create some of your many dreams for humanity. And those projects can use a lot of money. Money that you do not have to make more, pay more in taxes to funnel, and can prepare for an early retirement in which you can run a nonprofit that pursues beauty, truth, and goodness in the world without paying any taxes, without bogging yourself down with bureaucracy. So you're going to discover at that point, at my point, I wish I had started and learned about that sooner. Not that I wish that I'd made a lot more money sooner. I do wish, right? So these are some tips, right? There are 3 avenues that, knowing at age 20 or so, could have made a big difference. One is you can start a solo 401k and put more than a traditional IRA. You can start a solo 401k and you can invest that money tax-free up to, usually you can put in anywhere from $12,000 to $30,000 in our earning kind of territory a year. That reduces the tax base, or the amount paid each year in taxes. And that money can grow up to a point where you can borrow money from the solo 401k to make a down payment in a house. That's useful information I've only learned recently. Secondly, through a free IRA, traditional IRA that reduces your taxable income for the year, you can put, right now it's $6,000 a year tax-free that reduces taxes for the year. And you can also learn to trade that. Now, another thing that is only recently come into focus for me is that there are companies, like for me it's Tesla, for me it's Ethereum. Right? There's other companies as well, but Tesla and Ethereum paving the way for blockchain technologies that are independent of governments and can help people bypass inflation, which is quite an issue in my time. Ethereum and Tesla, there are companies that are beautiful, that are doing good things in the world, and that are profitable. And so putting money into those companies not only helps to create a better world, but creates a larger and larger tax-free nest egg. So with an IRA and a solo 401k, it can bring you more rapidly to a point where you can think about global issues. Like, I notice that I'm 47 as I make this video. And having $150,000 in a retirement fund, knowing that that will keep growing and that I don't need it anytime soon, is a tremendous leverage point to take bigger risks in the nonprofit sector. Bigger risks in the nonprofit sector. In other words, in order to do the maximum amount of good in the world, it's useful to have a safety net so that you're not asked to decide between personal well-being and your vision. You can get that sooner. You can get that by age 30. If you put a little bit away and invest. In other words, you had it in your mind that you didn't want to support companies like Microsoft even if they were appreciating. Bravo. I agree with you. But there are companies that are doing amazing things for the future and the world. And it's worth looking into those. It's worth looking into options as well. Options are a tremendous source of leverage and guaranteed dividends. You can buy stocks and sell covered call options. You have about 80% probability of winning if you're out of the money enough in that dynamic. And you can sell covered puts. You can also, in things that you really want to support and don't want to expose to margin risk, you can buy options instead of margin and amplify your bets. And when you have a steady stream of income year after year, you can afford to take leveraged bets that may not turn out that year or the next year, but because options are leveraged 300 to 500%, well, if they turn out in year 3, well, that more than pays for the losses in the first 2 years. And if you're right in year 1, year 2, year 3, you can have 500% higher returns. So this is something that's worth understanding. And so the main thing I want to do is link for you the intersection not of personal happiness, right? You're right. I was right that having a bunch of money does not bring about a sense of deep fulfillment or much personal happiness. Experience, deep relationships, right on that focus. But if you can reach that point of personal relative independence, where in a medical accident, in some unfortunate event, you can easily take care of yourself for at least 3 years, or can move towards, an abundant retirement, that can allow you to shift earlier to the nonprofit sector. And that area is fulfilling. Like, if you can save 3 lives instead of 1 life, if you can help 100 people to be twice as happy while consuming less natural resources, that's much better than just doing 10 people, right? And that is fulfilling. And so what I'd really like to see you do is start investing in your 20s. First, invest in an IRA and a solo 401k plan. If you reach a point where you start to pay taxes beyond that, then start the basic nonprofit using something like LegalZoom and invest up to $50,000 a year. I also want you to focus investments in things that will grow your skills, as you've generally done quite well. And so that you don't want to stop investing in you in any way, but just rather have a goal, because just having the goal, which means you need a reason, and this is the reason I've discovered. The reason I've discovered is to put as much money as possible into nonprofits that I can direct in the question, how can I spend this money? How can I spend my time to create the most amount of sustainable well-being for myself and other people? That is an exciting goal. In recent years, I wrote an article, How to Spend $1 Billion to Make the World a Better Place. It's a tremendously fun project, and I encourage you to do that in your 20s. How to spend $1 billion so that more people would experience a higher level of well-being than any other way of spending that money. To provide the most amount of well-being for the least amount of time, money, and natural resources. And then start earning money for those projects. Tax-free, exciting, things worth living for. And what this will do by creating positive futures to dream of early retirement, to dream of impact, to learn about investing, is it will take some of the volatility in relationships, in health, in work, in the economy, and make them less of an identity crisis, less of a trauma, less of a big deal. In other words, by creating a big vision and taking steps towards that, then we both have something else to focus on other than the latest up and down. Thank you for listening, Dane, and good luck.